Hello and welcome to another edition of On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We're on location once again, back in Grand Bahama. You're probably wondering why. We'll explain that to you as our show goes on. But this is a very significant and important show for us. I'm going to begin now with a little social studies lesson. How many of you have ever heard of Golda Meir, Margaret Thatcher, Rajiv Gandhi, Benazir Bhutto, Theresa May, Angela Merkel? A little closer to home, names like Dame Eugenia Charles, Janet Jagan, Portia Simpson Miller, or Mia Mottley. All women who have ascended to positions of authority, who have led their countries from the highest possible office. Yet, the position of leader in the Bahamas continues to elude women, and for so many reasons. And as a matter of fact, even our neighbors to the north in the United States. But is this just a symptom of a larger social issue that we are facing in this context? Today we're going to attempt to dig a little deeper into some of the issues our women and girls are facing, and possibly how we can begin to find some real solutions. Our show today is called Who is Really Calling the Shots? Where do Bahamian women sit in the decision-making process in the Bahamas, and who is helping to make those decisions? I'm very honored to have as my guest on this show, President of the Senate, Senator Kay Forbes. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have you on the show. First time you've been on this show, and certainly in this capacity, so we're certainly honored to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I see you have your own little twist, some extras on this show today.
Oh yes, most definitely. The thing about what I like this show for is that it allows us to really dig deep into a lot of issues. And even though we're here to talk about the work that you're doing, I think it's symptomatic of a larger issue that we're facing in our country. Also happy to have in this segment as well, Zenobia Coakley-Mills, Assistant Director, Department of Social Services.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. And you're probably wondering where we're going with this show, but certainly we're going to explain all of that to you, and of course throw a few surprises. Kay, I'm going to start with you. You represent an organization that is doing something very significant, and it's based here in Grand Bahama. I want you to talk about GirlCon. First of all, what you do and why you thought it was so important to be a part of and to bring this organization to life.
Well, we started a year ago, Jerome, and a group of women got together, and we decided that we needed to help and shape the next generation of leaders in the country. But we needed to do more than just, it's not just about political leadership, it's not just about leadership in the schools, it's about leadership in everything that young women get involved in. And so what we did is we had a conference last year. That's why we call it GirlCon, because you know when you're dealing with young women and teenage girls, you want to get their appetite whet about what you're doing. So hence we called our organization GirlCon. So what started out as a singular event is now an organization. And so what we're doing is we have these conferences in November leading up to National Women's Week. And what we do is we get a panel of women to talk about some of the struggles being in their profession, some of the things that they've overcome. And we target specifically the high school seniors in the schools simply because we feel that they are ready for the next journey. And there are some things that will impact them as they leave high school and move on. Last year we had a wonderful panel, and we have an exceptional panel again this year. So it's really about talking to women who have really been through the struggle. And we make it a very interactive kind of session. And that's why we like to do our shows in studios, and this year we're at the Regency Theater. It gives the girls an opportunity to really converse and ask questions to our panels. But we saw it very necessary as we try to, as I say, our focus is to shape the next group of future leaders for the country.
Physically, boys and girls are very different. But what are the things that make girls even more? What are some of the special challenges that are specific just to young women and young girls that we're seeing in our society that are probably leading to wider or greater issues as they become women?
Excuse me, good morning. One of the things that happens with child development is that girls, from a cultural perspective, women have always been seen as the weaker vessel, and they tend to be exploited because of their vulnerability. So when you have young ladies that have come out of environments of abuse of any kind, neglect of any kind, then you have them dealing with self-esteem issues. So they become very easy targets for predators. And so we see girls being caught up in trafficking, which is, on the rise, modern day slavery. We see girls being caught up in situations where they are exploited otherwise. Particularly in the case of trafficking, there's, domestic servitude, the sex work, the labor trafficking, there is the child trafficking, where even younger girls, excuse me, are targeted for the same purpose. Persons are making a lot of money off of it. One of the things that Ms. Senator refers to in her introduction is child marriage, person's teenage pregnancy. All these things interrupt the development of a young girl.
Now, culturally, young marriages and, teen pregnancy, those have been a part of who we are for a long time.
Yes.
Our grandparents, great-grandparents would have gotten married at, 15, 16, 17. And so that's almost culturally ingrained, eh?
It's culturally ingrained, but as we grow and develop, we understand the things that when you ask a child to do something that their body, their mind is not prepared for, then you are negatively impacting their development to an adulthood. And what they're doing by empowering young women and the speakers that they're bringing in, they are persons who would have had challenges of their own, and they overcame them. So persons who are in those type of situations would see that there is a way out. This is not a situation that I have to be trapped in eternally, So yes, we are evolving as a nation internationally. We find out that a lot of things that happened in the past, they're no longer acceptable because we want persons to reach their maximum potential.
So we understand and appreciate what your organization is about, but the men folk out there are saying, I thought we did this already. We've been empowering women for decades. What y'all talking about?
Well, I was able to listen to a show just the other day where it's International Men's Day on Tuesday, and they were
Really?
That's what I heard from the show. I didn't even realize that it was, and they were talking about some of the things that they wanted to do. I wasn't quite sure I bought into everything that they were talking about. But Jerome, the reality is this, even with the United Nations, and we've looked at the 17 sustainable goals that the United Nations has, and one in particular is number 5, and that's the goal on gender equality. And I guess when you look at that, and where we are in the Bahamas, I don't have to talk about the fact that there are still some things wrong with our Constitution as it relates to women in our country. And we went, as an organization, when we looked at what we wanted to do and how we wanted to align our vision and our mission, we looked at those 17 sustainable goals. And we picked number 5 because it has everything to do with where we are as women in this country. You talked about some women who have been prime ministers in their countries and have had the opportunity to lead their countries. We have a long way to go in this country, in the Bahamas. And that was evident when we had 2 women, Glenys Hanna Martin and Loretta Butler Turner, who ran for leadership in both organizations. And really, and I'm one of the first people to say, I am not going to just support a female because they are female. I believe that you have to come to the job with certain skills. And so in those 2 cases, when you look and you evaluate why they perhaps were not selected, a lot of it had to do with women themselves not wanting to support other women. That's a key issue we have in this country.
I'm glad you brought it up, because during I remember during those party races, and even after that, when Loretta Butler Turner became leader of opposition in the House, some of the comments that I heard women making and other men, oh, we'll never follow a woman as leader. And then by extension, when Hillary Clinton ran for president of the United States, the comments that I heard Bahamian women and men making, I was sort of taken aback.
Right. But you know, she still won the popular vote in the United States.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, I think when we look at everything across the board, women themselves in this country are not necessarily ready to support a female in leadership. That's unfortunate. Because, as I said, I think that people ought to be looked at by what they bring to the table, their leadership ability, their skill set, and that's how the determination should be made. We can't still be talking in this country that we will never have a female leader in the country because she's female. That just doesn't work. But what is important to me as an individual is that we pick somebody, whoever the leader is, male or female, best possible candidate, has the skill set to lead. And when you don't have the skill set, you know where to go and find it.
Do we teach our boys to disrespect our women and our girls?
Whether it's directly or indirectly, by the examples that we set for them, yes, we do. It's pervasive, and it's amazing when you have a child growing up in a household of abuse, domestic violence, and there's no intervention to assist them in recovering and understanding what is right and what is wrong. The child thinks that's normal. So they replicate it in their household, and the cycle continues. That is why it's so often there's intervention from a professional to assist them in realizing, you know, what needs to be corrected, what needs to be adjusted.
Let me say something to you, Jerome, just on that point that Zenobia is talking about. We found in dealing with a lot of the high school seniors and talking to the girls who were part of GirlCon last year, and even talking to some of them in the schools when we launched on International Day of the Girl Child, a lot of girls say that they do feel within the schools sometimes, in their classrooms, that they're fighting for their position, and that they do feel a little bit that, you know, the boys are treated differently.
But predominantly teachers are women.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. But that's what the girls are saying. But it goes back to our point too. And what Zenobia is saying, some of these things are culturally ingrained, and we don't even realize what we are doing. And I think that is really where it starts.
I recall dealing with a group of boys some time ago. It was a program that I was completing. And these boys, all of them, there were about 20 of them in the group, and there may have been about 2 who did not have the attitude, and as young as 10, that they had to top up their girl to keep them in control.
At 10?
At 10. I was amazed because,
wow,
you know, you think I've been in social services 35 years, there's nothing I've not seen or heard.
Yeah. I'm sure that's tested probably every day.
So that really, you know, that was very upsetting to learn.
10 years old.
At 10 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But also, you know, I had the opportunity to sit through some of the CEDAW preparations before the minister went to Geneva, correct. And in those meetings, even the minister said, you know, as far as he's concerned, he has, I think, 2 girls and a boy. And he says, you know, he never thinks about them as girl and boy. He expects the same from them. He treats them all the same way. And I think that's a very important issue. And it goes right back to what we do as a culture, what we do in our homes. Because sometimes as parents, our expectations of our boys and girls may be different. And we don't even know that we're doing that. And I think it is ingrained in us culturally.
You find that the expectations are different, the roles are different?
Yes, a lot of households are still traditional, you know, and so you expect the girl to do this, expect the boy to do this. I'll give you another example. When I did a stint at the Wilmay Pratt Center, we found that when the girls are what we now call beyond parental control, because the parents can't keep them in the house, they're sleeping out or whatever, they will render them beyond parental control because they don't want to deal with the consequences of the girl child. The boys are being arrested with committing different offenses. But when everybody gets together, it's a reunion. Everybody knows everybody. So they're all involved in similar activities. But the girls are rendered beyond parental control before they get in a situation where they are arrested. So you have the same population, they're doing the same thing.
So they'll allow the boys to get arrested.
They'll allow the boys to run wild and do whatever.
So the boys
and
allowed
police
to
will
get into
stop
more
them.
trouble.
Yes.
But as soon as the girl shows
start acting
a sign of problems.
No, you ain't bring no baby in here, or, on the other consequences. So they're rendered beyond parental control.
Interesting discussion. We are at the point of our first break. As you can tell, this has opened a whole big Pandora's box for us. Stay with us. On the Record continues right after this.
On the Record is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Christmas wishes. What if they all just worked?
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart believe. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Believe, oh yeah. Here we are as in olden days. Happy golden days of yore. Faithful friends who believe in us, gather near to us once more.
We work all year round to help entire communities to flourish. Together, let's bring some light into our lives. Alive. Believe in best.
This portion of On the Record is brought to you by Generali Insurance Company Limited, your employee benefits specialists.
And welcome back to On the Record. We're on location in Grand Bahama. Who's calling the shots? Where do Bahamian women sit at the decision-making table? That's our topic. I'm very honored to have as my guest President of the Senate, Senator Kay Forbes Smith, along with Zenobia Coakley Mills, Assistant Director from the Department of Social Services. Ladies, this show obviously is a great eye-opener for many reasons, as it speaks to where we are in the development of our girls and women, and are they really taking their rightful place around every table. You mentioned not just the political table, but the corporate table, even in the home. I'm always so very curious because you will hear men's organizations saying that our men and boys are being emasculated. The mother's in charge at home, they go to school, the teacher's a woman, Sunday school teacher's a woman. And so you have all these symbols of women who are in charge, but yet there is a disparity. What has happened? What continues to happen? How is this shift happening when, you grow up with the woman being in charge of the little boy, but that doesn't translate outside?
Well, I mean, the fact is, Jerome, let's face it, if you look at the public service, I would say there are probably more women in leadership positions in the public service than men. Mm-hmm. You have the Secretary to the Cabinet who's female. If you looked at how many PSs or deputy PSs there are, you see female. Even in corporate Bahamas, women have done well. And you look at other businesses, you look at where we are in politics, for example. You brought up this whole political thing. But politics, at its core, is still dominated by the males.
Who's calling the shots?
Yeah, who's calling the shots? Mm-hmm. And so, unless you get to the point in this country where even when you start to look at who candidates are at the party level, and they're serious about allowing women to be offered a candidacy, we're going to be right where we are as it relates to politics. Because let's face it now, if you look at, it's a big deal if a political party nominates 10 women to run. That's a big deal.
They campaign on that.
Yeah, they campaign
We're the party of women.
We're the party of women because we nominated 10 women, right? But the question is, do we do the same thing that we do for male candidates? Do we look at some of the easy seats and say, you know, let's put this woman there because she comes to the table with a strong financial background and maybe she can serve as Minister of State for Finance or something. We don't do that. And I don't think any political party does that, okay? They are not serious about women ascending to leadership posts in the party. And that's the reality.
Does that impact how our girls see themselves? I mean, do they look at these things and think, I can expect sort of the token placement, or I can expect to be put there, but, you know, does that impact our girls and the development and how they see themselves and even their self-esteem?
I think so.
I think so. I think it does impact their self-esteem. That is why the intervention is so important, okay? Because once they realize that there are persons they can emulate, if they can see living examples, then they know that anything is attainable, but it's a matter of them believing in themselves. So you have to have organizations like GirlCon that will nurture that and inspire them to see that they can be anything they want to be.
That's what you know, it's interesting that Zenobia touched on that. Our theme this year is I am, I can, I will. Very powerful words. And that's what we as an organization want to promote to our young women. We want them to see the panelists that we bring in. We want them to understand that, you know, sometimes the path or the journey that you're on is very difficult, but there's an opportunity to fall down and get up and start again. That's also why, in my case, for me, I started these educational tours in the Senate, and I'm, you know, great support from all the senators who are also doing some of the instruction. But sometimes I put on my robe and my wig. I visit schools. I visited schools in Grand Bahama, and I want to say to these young people, and especially the young women, look, I'm president of the Senate. You can certainly be that. I mean, I came from a family where my mother and father divorced, and she had to raise 4 children. She kept us in private school because she wanted us to be in private school. She used to pay our tuition on a weekly basis, made an arrangement with Sister Mary Alice, the nun who ran Mary Star at the time. And she did the same thing probably with Joe Darwell at Catholic. And we never knew that until we were adults, that she was struggling to pay our tuition weekly. And so what we're saying is that, you know, you can have all these difficulties in your life, but that doesn't mean you can't be what you want to be.
Yes.
I have to ask this because when you look at a failed referendum to give basic equal rights to women, and that was supported largely by women. Women voted no. How do you now defend equality when women themselves have said no?
Well, first of all, Jerome, those referendums should never happen 2 months or 3 months before an election.
Because it happened twice.
It happened twice.
Yeah.
It happened at the same timing, basically, and an election was imminent. That doesn't make any sense. As far as I'm concerned, so many people need to be educated in our country about the issue, first of all, and secondly, what is a referendum? And we take it for granted that people know. We take it for granted that we spend enough time talking about it, but we don't, you know. And I personally, I heard somebody else making a suggestion. They thought that anytime we want to make any constitutional changes, why aren't we doing it during the election time when we're actually voting? You know, we can stage it then, but there's much education that should happen prior. And so when we begin to use these things and people start to use it as a political tool, it's never going to be successful. And I think that's why they failed miserably. And I agree with you. Yeah. Most of the women still say no. Okay.
Yeah, but, and then how? So then that becomes my argument. You know, the biblical references, and the man is the head of the household, and you can never be equal. How do you combat that when women are saying, oh, no, I don't consider myself on the same level? How do you combat that?
But you know, this thing about don't consider on the same level, you know, when I look at myself personally in my home, you know, yeah, my husband is the figure that's in charge in our home. I won't do anything that the children want to do without discussing major decisions or whatever. But that has nothing to do with who I am as an individual. You know what I mean? I think people look at this thing about the man like he makes the final decision. I thought you make it together as a family. You know, it just really, I think what Zenovia says has all to do with the way we think. It's our cultural biases, okay? And we're just not ready to change. But I think we need to talk about these things.
So how do we now, go ahead.
I had a thought while she was talking. When you look at the majority of households being female-headed, women only rise to the occasion when there is no man there to do what needs to be done. So if I have in my head, I got to do this, I got to deal with this, I have to struggle to do that, I still want the man there to take care of me. I'm only doing this because he's not there. So I'm thinking that might be in their minds that they don't want to move forward with the equality because they really want to be rescued.
Right, it's a nurturing.
You know?
Yeah.
So you know, when we're educating, and because there was a vigorous educational campaign that took place, but what was the agenda?
See, that's the problem.
And that,
you know, this campaign.
yes.
You know, first of all, I think that when we want buy-in from the Bahamian people, we have to get buy-in from every corner of the Bahamas. If I needed, as a person in politics, if I want buy-in on something, I'm going to start with the church women's groups. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk to the sporting groups where the women are.
Very basic level.
Yeah, you know, you have to talk to people because people, I don't think women generally should think that if one day we have a female prime minister in the Bahamas that has anything to do, I'm sure that prime minister who's female still wants the support of her husband.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't know that it has anything to do with just trying to usurp the authority of a man. Yes. I don't think that's what it is.
So do you think we understand that as a people?
You know?
No, I think there's a misunderstanding all around. People are so busy and caught up in just living, you know, dealing with the challenges of life, that they don't entertain all these thoughts about, if I don't want to go there, then I'm not interested.
Right.
You know, so like she said, the buy-in is needed.
And you talk about it, but there are men who are vehemently opposed under no circumstances, never gonna happen, never will happen. They won't even entertain the thought.
Well, look, there's some men in the community right here in Grand Bahama who don't entertain the thought of a woman being a member of parliament. So you talking about prime minister.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It is.
And those attitudes will be there. But what is important is that you educate your community so that they understand, you know, we ain't trying to take over. We just want to make a contribution. And if that is the area in which we choose to make a contribution, we should be given the opportunity. So you have to change your mindset.
And judged by what you bring to the table, not how you look.
Do you think that continues to be, that's a systemic countrywide problem. I mean, I think we never look at what people bring to the table, you know, in terms of qualifications.
Yes.
We seem to look at all manner of other things.
Oh, of course, and politics being one of them.
Yes.
I hope that we can grow as a country one day when no matter who is the government of the day, people will be used who can help us move this country forward.
In the past, we've had, I mean, and you look back, you know, from the days of Dame Doris Johnson, who held
the first female
president of the Senate in the 70s.
Right.
I mean, and that then was so progressive. And you've looked at, you know, you've had female deputy prime ministers, Speaker of the House, you know, I think the third female president of the Senate, fourth. Chief Justice, president of the Court of Appeal, all of ascended to positions of a, these are even Governor General.
Right.
But yet we still seem to be falling short right there at the cusp. Is it because these are the, I'm going to give this to the woman just so we could say we've done these things and to pacify and to...
Yeah, listen, Jerome, something is really wrong when 54% of the electorate is female and when 18,000 more women registered to vote than men. Something's wrong. The fact of the matter is, if you looked at the statistics, if all women were supporting women, maybe we'd have a cabinet of females and a house that had predominantly women. And then we'd be talking about why only 3 men in the house.
A different show.
Yeah, but if you look at the statistics of the last election, something is wrong. Something is really wrong, And that's one of the reasons GirlCon is an important organization. We keep pushing and talking to the young women and saying, look, you can be what you want to be. You can expect that you're going to have problems, but look what these other women, these examples for you throughout your community can do. And that's why this organization is so important.
And you think we need more of that pushing, that constant reinforcement?
Anybody who's going to challenge the status quo will have to understand that barriers will be there. And it is with persistence. Persistence wears down resistance.
Do you think also, too, that there's an expectation from some women that, hey, because I'm a woman, I'm entitled to, or I should get? Does that happen?
Well, I don't know where that happens. There ain't no women around me. I don't know. I can't pick one woman I know who thinks that.
Yes. Okay. I just thought to ask. Ladies, we are at the point of our second break in the show. Zenobia Cook, thank you so much for coming on. You've really helped to put some things into context for us, and I trust that people have listened and will begin to change their thinking and become conscious, because a lot of times a consciousness of something, of what you're doing or what you're not doing, is the first step towards change.
Yes, it is the first step. And, once we understand that persons, they just want to do good, they just want to make contribution, they just want to improve the country, the direction that it's going in, and not look at the outside factors, they'll be much better off.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a break, come back. On the Record from Grand Bahama continues right after this.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home. With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you. Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
Hey, look at you all. Look at you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, man.
Oh, why can't this internet work any faster?
I hear that.
Introducing the new Rev Triple Play with free HBO Go. 200% faster internet and unlimited calling everywhere you go. Sign up for only $99 and enter to win over $50,000 in cash and prizes. Rev, you and us together.
We are in our second season of On the Record, and we thank you, our viewing audience, for allowing us into your homes every Thursday at 8 p.m. We value your opinion and we want you to be a part of our discussions. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and comment on our exciting topics. Remember, it's all on the record. And we are back on the record, coming to you from Grand Bahama. Our show this week, who is really calling the shots? Where do Bahamian women sit at the decision-making table? Happy to have still with me President of the Senate, Senator Kay Forbes Smith. Also happy to welcome to the set Sharon Gardner-Taylor, Learning, Development and Delivery Manager with GIBC. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You guys are doing some great things here in Grand Bahama. Your company recently opened, a part of this whole push on the island to make Grand Bahama a technology hub. One of the things that I find very interesting is this now move to get women more involved even in technology. I remember years ago as a child watching Sesame Street, where they had the, that women can do women can do anything. And you had the woman as a construction worker and, all these other things. And back then it was to, empower women to get into the jobs that were predominantly for men. But now we seem to be at another precipice almost, because a lot of the technology, science, math jobs, even medicine to a certain degree, are thought to be male, or are male dominated, thought to be jobs just for men. But now you're looking to change that, eh?
We have intentionally attracted women to our company by when we have internship programs for high school students, college students. We ensure that we have 50% women all the time. It's mandatory. So we can never have more men than women. So we have to either seek the students out, or if they come to us naturally, we will ensure we pick the best females to join our company for internship programs. Also, in our company, we have more than 30% of our executives are actually women. The person responsible for strategy in our company is a woman. The chief of staff in our company is a woman. The human resources manager is a woman. The training manager is a woman. So we have intentionally placed women in leadership roles because we understand that empowerment for women is not just education and technology, but actually the opportunity to make decisions. That's true empowerment. You must have the power to make the decisions, and that's where we have placed the women in our company.
How do the men take that?
Well, call it a shift in culture, if you may, but our CEO, Greg Wood, is the champion of this, actually. So the tail goes where the head goes, as the saying says, right? So if our CEO believes that women should play a significant role and that they should have a real seat at the table, not a token seat at the table, then the rest of the company must go in that direction.
Now, you would have said sort of the basis of my whole show.
Right.
But thank you. A lot of times, and I've seen it in my own experience, you will have women at a boardroom table or at that table. And, it's, when the rubber meets the roads, sometimes, you will see the men over talking or talking down to or dismissing even
yes.
At that level.
Let me tell you, Jerome, I'll give you an example. I've been in a meeting, right? And so you'll come up with this very good suggestion. And then some male will say, they won't say, that suggestion that Kay gave or maybe what Sharon gave won't give you credit for the suggestion, but we'll talk about this suggestion, right? As if it's their suggestion and nobody brought it up, right? So that's a bit of what you're saying. But when Sharon talks about what GIBC is doing in terms of women's empowerment in their organization, why do you have to ask the question, what do the men say?
Exactly.
Why?
I just know from my own experience. Okay, here's why I asked that. If you look at, for instance, in the United States with affirmative action, okay, where, jobs, universities, etc., are mandated to take people of color, minorities, etc., a lot of white Americans have issue with that. Why do you have to make that special accommodation? Why does that need to happen? So when I asked that question, it was in that context. I'm sure men will go, well, why? Why do you have to make that special provision for women? I thought it should be whomever is the best person.
Some persons would consider reverse discrimination.
Yes.
Right.
Right? But we must make an effort, though, Jerome, to be inclusive. If we don't be deliberate in our efforts, women will be excluded. Women will be pushed aside. We will become just tokens, just there for sitting down there for pretty.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But there are some men, because they are traditionalists or they come from a traditional background, maybe it's religious persuasions, they feel that women should be in the kitchen with an apron, right? But we all know that it was Esther,
correct,
I think, who influenced the king.
I like that reference.
Right? And we know what happened as a result of her influence. And so women have good strategy. We are thinkers. We think from a different place. We actually add value to a company filled with men. Because if you have all men making decisions, the decision will almost always lean a certain way. But you need women.
Welcome to the country.
But you know what, Susan, no, what Susan is saying has a lot of merit. And the reason for that is I think about, I'll put in your favorite subject of politics here now in this sphere, right? Every time a party or a government comes to power, who ends up being the Minister of Social Services? Why? Tell me why. What do you think?
Go take care of that.
Right.
That's your area.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I say that, Jerome, to say that even when you look at the whole picture, and both political parties, I think, are at fault for this, women give a different perspective. Okay? We think differently. And from that whole point of view, with social services, for example, women are genuinely interested in the family, in the children, some of the social issues that are going on. But men are not necessarily interested. And so if we don't have enough women sitting at the table looking at other things that men just simply are not interested in, it ain't going to happen.
Well, I have to ask, we have a male Minister of Social Services.
Yeah, and I think in successive governments, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, under the Progressive Liberal Party, there was a male who was probably the first minister who had social services as their portfolio. Frankie Campbell doesn't see it that way. He talks about it as if he's very genuinely interested in moving the cause beyond just sitting there, you know. And so he has no problem, obviously, being the Minister of Social Services. I don't think we should treat social services as a ministry, as something that's on the lower totem pole, because all of the social issues we have in this country should tell us we need to be serious about what we're doing. That
ministry deserves a lot more.
Yes,
yeah,
and I think we should pay attention to it a lot more.
I've got to ask this, and I hear it having worked and sat around the corporate table. Men will tell you, oh, women are so emotional. They bring so much emotion to the decision making.
But when men round and talking loud, that's emotional too.
Yeah, but just give it another label.
That's it.
They give it a different label.
Yeah,
you know.
It's assertive, it's aggressive.
Right.
But women are emotional. I mean, come on. You know? That's what it is, Jerome. It's just language. It's semantics. We're playing around with it.
A strong woman is aggressive.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and they use aggressive as a bad word when they are talking about people who are competent.
Mm-hmm. Do you find, and having had women bosses, do you find that men react differently to having a female boss than a male boss?
Yes. I find that men may want to challenge a female boss because they may feel like they don't have a right to talk to them that way because she is a woman, right?
How dare you all?
How dare you, exactly. And in those instances, you must introduce policies from the onset that guide the behavior of men towards women. Okay? If a woman is a boss, if a woman is in charge, you don't speak to the fact that she is a woman in the policy. You speak to the fact of your responsibility to behave in a certain way toward your superior or to your senior. Right. That automatically protects anyone in the chair.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So policies must be clear. There must be consequences, as if there would be consequences with a man, as a man who's a boss. So the policies must be clear. Also, women have a role to play as well. We have to remember that men culturally don't think we should be in charge. So we also have to adjust our approach, right? Okay? We cannot speak down at a man. We cannot speak down to anyone for that matter. We must always be respectful, and we must remember that if a man shouts, it's not necessarily because he's being rude, because he's being male, and male are naturally dominant or domineering in their approach. So we can't be so thin-skinned, if you may. Okay, we have to be stronger when we are in leadership positions.
We've got to take our final break in the show. Stay with us. We are back with more on the record right after this.
Christmas wishes. What if they all just worked?
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart believe. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Believe, oh yeah. Here we are as in olden days. Happy golden days of your arms. Faithful friends who believe in us, gather near to us once more.
We work all year round to help entire communities to flourish. Together, let's bring some light into our lives. Alive, believe, invest.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home. With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you. Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
Welcome back to On the Record, our show coming to you from Grand Bahama today. We have gotten a fantastic discussion going really about the role of women, and are they really taking their rightful places and being taken seriously across the board. We talked about politics, we talked about everything. I want to narrow the discussion a bit to focus on technology. Technology really is the fastest growing and most exciting field of our times. It is driving everything that we do. Your company has decided, I'm sure like many others, to be very deliberate in how many women, where you place them in the workforce. Is this representing a paradigm shift of sorts of how women are being seen and treated in the workplace? And it goes back to, I think, a problem that I see. Even though women have across the board are in every profession doing everything, there's still always that issue of equal pay and equal opportunity. And when the promotion comes around, will it be different in technology? Just because I find everything about the technology field is so different, and it's such a different generation. And you talk about millennials, and then the other ones that come by, and I can't even pronounce what they are. Yeah, they're already like 2 or 3 generations beyond the millennials. But because technology is so dynamic, are we going or beginning to see a paradigm shift?
I think that we are seeing a paradigm shift, especially with the amount of women entering the profession of technology. I can speak, though, to GIBC. We have locations in New York, which is our main base, Singapore, We have here in the Bahamas, Abuja, right? Different places in the world. But we must operate in compliance with the laws of those countries. Okay? So let's say, for instance, in the Bahamas, we can receive equal pay for the job that we perform, whether we be male or female. Because we are based in New York, an American-based company, it means that we must abide by no lesser laws than that of the United States. Okay? So if their regulations say that we must receive equal pay, then no matter where GIBC is in the world, they must pay their men and women equally. Okay? The challenge may be where you might find a country that says, well, you pay above, and I don't know if that country exists, because a lot of countries in the world do not really recognize the right of women to have equal pay. So that may be a challenge. But we know for a fact that at GIBC, men are paid equally with women and vice versa. There's no discrimination of any kind.
But that's not always, that's not
always the
fact,
case.
yeah.
No, that's not always the case, even in our country.
Yeah.
And we know that. GIBC should be commended for setting the policies that they have in place for a certain amount of women being hired, being treated the same way. I mean, I think it's a good corporate policy that they're doing, but we don't see that all the time in many businesses across the country, not just here in Freeport, but perhaps in Nassau and some of the other family islands. So they should be commended for their corporate
How do we fix that? What do we need to do to ensure that that does not happen? I mean, we're talking about all this work that GirlCon is doing, and even the work that you all are doing, to create this level playing field and to empower girls who will become empowered women to seize these opportunities and to elevate. But you get on the job, and then there's still these discriminatory policies and practices.
Yeah. Well, I know when we talk we've been in workshops and we talk about negotiation. You know, women are not always the best at negotiating their salaries and their benefits. And so, again, as an organization, as we continue with our GirlCon activities, the conferences that we have, we're going to be talking to these young women about, you know, how you prepare yourself for the workplace, how you structure your resume, how do you discuss, you know, salary, and you know, how you openly do it. Because men and female may have a challenge. That's a challenge. I have an HR background, and I know how challenging it is when you apply for a job and you don't have any idea what that salary range should be, where you should be in your request. So it's about really teaching people negotiating skills, I think. That's what we're about in our organization.
And to be commended. Socially, and I have to ask you this, do we socialize our children the same? You know, in the classroom, the boys, by virtue of their behavior, get more attention. You know, they're the ones, the teachers always sit down, behave, stop, etc. But does that lead to differences down the road that we see? I mean, I'm always curious to look into where some of our issues begin. I think
they begin exactly there. I think they begin in the home, where the expectation of parents, they expect it's okay for the boys to be out till 2 o'clock in the morning, but the girls got to be home by 10.
In bed, yeah.
You know, you're in the classroom and you're making allowances for the boys as well sometimes. You know, I think it's a cultural thing, Jerome. You know, Synovia brought up some good points on the things that we do in our own culture, and these little subtle things we don't think is a big deal, but they become a big deal later on.
Do you see that sort of manifest years later now on the job?
I think that especially with technology, for instance, if when we introduce technology, we introduce it at a very early age, so that boys and girls are playing with computers at the same time, they're learning coding at the same time to develop games at the same time, because mostly you see the boys with their Xbox 360 or you know whatever the stations are at the time.
The boys are gaming.
Boys are gaming,
Right.
and that actually stimulates their mind because emotionally they're in a relaxed place and they're learning more. And that's why boys are geared more towards technology and science and math and engineering, right? So if you stimulate the minds of girls earlier in a primary setting, in a lower school setting, and if they come up through the years with that same type of motivation, then they will be different thinkers.
Right.
So then when they come to negotiation, they would be bolder in their approach because they've been sitting with the boys for years now playing games.
Right, yeah.
You know, and doing other things. So they would be better negotiators. They would feel more empowered because I think a lot of times it's about being timid or being afraid to assert yourself because culturally we don't want to be called bigoted.
Right.
You know, because we may not get hired.
Well, other people would.
Okay.
It's too late for me.
I like that. We're about to wrap up again. I'm going to really... Before we get to the wrap up, though, it brought up a point. The assertive woman or the woman who exerts power or is that power player on the job is often referred to as the B word.
Yeah.
She is. And it's unfair. It's unfair because if you think of what she's probably had to do to get there in the first place, you know, a lot of times, and I'm not talking about the negative way of getting there, because that woman isn't even fared anyhow, right? But the woman who has earned her spot there, who studied hard, stayed up late, who's probably done more classes to advance herself, she's had to prove herself. Sometimes, Senator, we've bald our heads so that we wouldn't be seen so feminine. We try to defeminize ourselves.
Really?
The struggle can be real sometimes.
Yeah.
We tend to want to put on suits rather than a dress, even
right.
if we like dresses. There are certain things that women have to do to really not earn the respect, but to not be seen as weaker in some way. Even the colors that we wear to work sometimes, even the color lipstick or nail polish, women have to be conscious.
Everything.
That's not fair to us.
Yeah.
And you know, you say that, and that's such an eye opener. I never realized or thought about that.
Yeah.
We have to do a lot of things sometimes, you know, to look authoritative without being overpowering. And then we want to be all woman, but then we have to scale back because if we're all woman, then we'd be seen as weak, you know? So I think that...
And who are you trying to pick up?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, so I think that in organizations now, you're seeing the woman who's not afraid to be
a woman.
A woman, you know, we're not afraid to show who we really are inside. And I think when that happens and they're not so afraid of us anymore, then we wouldn't have a problem. There wouldn't be a power struggle between men and women at the top.
Sharon, I think that is an excellent way to end our discussion. I thank you so much for coming on. This has been an eye-opener for me. And I'm hoping the audience would feel the same way, particularly the men in the audience, to begin to, as I said earlier, to have a consciousness about things. And I think women need to have a consciousness as well about some of the things, you know, we talked about culturally that we do to set our young women and our girls back. But thank you. Kate Forbes-Smith, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Best of luck with GirlCon. Continue to do the great work that you're doing here. Thank you very much, too, for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been a great discussion. Good stuff.
Thanks.
Folks, that's going to do it for this edition of On the Record. I'd like to thank all of my guests for coming on today and engaging in such an interesting conversation. You just never know what we're going to talk about on the show week to week. You never know. Thank you so much to all of our guests who participated. Also, thank you to my producer, my technical team, my production team, all of you who've helped to make this show possible. Thank you so very much. Grand Bahama, thank you for always welcoming us with open arms and making us feel that this really is our home. Thank you so much. That's going to do it for this edition. Once again, I'm Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time.